introducing Dr. William Deagle.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for coming to the conference today. I hope to cover quite a bit of material, so I'm going to move along fairly quickly. If you see me moving around, I guess you'll have to follow me with the camera. This lecture, although it's going to talk about, I like to use a little humor sometimes because I have a national radio show as part of one of my avocations. It's called the NutriMedical Report on Genesis Network. And I broadcast at 2 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. You can listen on my website, NutriMedical, N-U-T-R-I, medical.com. You can also find a lot of new technologies because I search all over the world for new technologies, specialists in stem cells. In fact, that's what I'll be doing, is helping Dr. David Steenblock in Southern California on his stem cell research and some other areas that we'll be working on. To start with, here we go. I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is, when you come to conferences like the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, even if you're a veteran, I hope to show you something new today or get you out of your paradigm. But there's good, new technology, 7 different categories I'm going to cover. The bad things that are either about to happen or have started to happen, and really ugly, that you have to understand are major challenges to not only human life but all life on this planet. There's really 7 principles, and that slide is a little busy, but we're going to go through each of the categories. The first, of course, is dealing with 7 good keystone principles of lifespan wellness and extension. The first is structural. And we're talking about detoxification, alkalinization, protein, membrane delinkage, which of course is important for glycation, and hyperbaric oxygen. Second is energetics, and of course you live as long as your mitochondria. In fact, if you want to estimate your key lifespan, one of your main factors is take the average life of your mother, and your grandmother, and your great-grandmother, if they haven't died of a traumatic injury or war, and you average their lives out, and you'll actually determine probably the key factor in terms of how long you're going to live, because your mitochondria are like your Duracell batteries. The third is epigenetics, and this is getting more and more important, especially with things like electromagnetic ELF pollution. Minerals have an epigenetic effect at either opening or turning on or silencing genes, and when you don't have certain minerals, those genes over time become silenced. Now, some silencing is normal, such as the morphogenesis that develops an organ or a tissue or makes you turn into an embryo from a blastula, morula, etc., and turns into a baby. But when you get older, if certain genes get switched off, you can't rebuild organs or tissues. And those are dependent on minerals, and the epigenetics of scalar pollution interferes with that. And we'll talk about that too. 4 is neurohormonal, and of course it's very complicated, but your hypothalamus regulates most of your hormones in your body, and as we've talked about yesterday, even some of the vitamins we consider vitamins actually are, according to the definition, hormones, because they're made in one part of the body and they have an action elsewhere. So we're talking about HCG, all the peripheral hormones, sex hormones, stress hormones. Then, of course, the 5th category is sclerosis, fibrosis, cytokines, and immune function in the subpopulations of cells. And if there's an imbalance of the Th1, Th2, which is the helper-suppressor ratio, you're going to be prone to allergy and autoimmune conditions. So those are important to understand that. The number 6 is stem cell rejuvenation, and, of course, maintenance of cell populations like your white cells. So we've had experts here at the conference talking about preserving your white cells by banking them, or your stem cells, and I would recommend that everyone here have, for their own purposes, their own cells, both their white cells, banked and kept at a facility. And usually what they do is they split them, so there are 2 facilities, so if one goes down, the others are there. Because you might need them decades later, especially with new advances. And number 7 is stealth pathogens. And most people don't realize your blood is not sterile. That everyone has a seething storm of pathogens. And of course, the germ theory of disease has not been taken to its logical end. If you actually check out the average person who has most of our major illnesses now, we're discovering, for example, not just an anomaly of once in a while cytomegalovirus-inducing vascular disease like stroke or heart attack, or the presence of pleomorphic nanobacteria that occur in the artery walls that will calcify plaque and make it up to 500% more dangerous in terms of making it unstable. So that's just one example. The other is research that I've uncovered, and many others, that there are pleomorphic nanobacteria, and fungi growing in most tumors. And so when you understand this, you understand the multi-step process of cancer development requires the presence of stealth pathogens. Stealth pathogens require the presence of free iron and heavy metals. And without those detoxification processes, it's very hard to get rid of these stealth pathogens that are a major cause. If you look at populations in the world that eat things like kefir yogurt in Georgia, with Rhododendron caucasicum, which is a dialyzable antioxidant that's a small molecule that goes through the blood-brain barrier or the bowel wall, they have a considerably lower incidence of not only dementing illnesses, but many of the major autoimmune and inflammatory and vascular diseases. So we're the sort of the Methuselah generation, trying to find our way to the promised technology. So let's go over a couple of these principles, and this is part of what I call the 7 good steps. Oral and IV chelation, and of course, if you've been doing this in the past, DMSA, EDTA, DMPS, things like cemento, which is the Uno de Gato herb from South America, Chlorella spirulina. And then, of course, we talk about the cytochrome activation of detox pathways, and those require specific herbals, adaptogenic nutrients, and minerals. You want to have very clean water. One of the problems in North America, and reports came out earlier this year that the EPA analysis indicated they only have to monitor 35 different chemicals in the water. They're proposing up to 55 soon, but the problem is there's over 7,700 with 7 new chemicals that are industrial or in the environment every day, new, that are in the air, food, and water. Many of these because material, including clothing, food, etc., is made in other parts of the world with standards and toxins that are not even approved in America. And then, of course, we talk about the need to alkalinize that water, but if you alkalinize water before you detox it, you actually increase the chances of absorption of toxins. So once you move a toxin into its what's called pKa, which is the range at which it's most in an ionic state, you will absorb more. So do not alkalinize before you detox your water. Then we talk about the new breakthroughs with Dr. Babashev and others in Russia on the idea of using dipeptide N-acetyl L-carnosine that will reverse cross-links in the eye, the retina, and other tissues in the body. So delinkage nutraceuticals as well for delinking membranes, proteins, and the lens of the eye. And then, of course, use of hyperbaric oxygen. And I'm working with a team that are even thinking about creating hyperbaric training rooms. So entire rooms are hyperbaric. If you think about the ideal environment for a human being, it may not be on the planet Earth. It may be inside a domed city with 3 atmospheres pressure, 30% oxygen, and a higher energetic magnetic field, because all the chemical reactions in your body require the movement of the valence electrons by a pulsing magnetic field, such as the Schumann resonance field of the Earth. The Russians, of course, discovered this years ago, so it's very important.